special board meeting, June 6th. Call the meeting to order.
Fifth. Here's a fifth.
I've been corrected. Today is the 5th of June. Thank you. All right, so the entire board is here. We have Austin Calaman and Robin Davis, our manager, general manager, and Mike Hoffman, our legal counsel. Let the record show that the city is not currently present. We're going to be taking up a bid package anyway, though. All right, so first item on the agenda is the awarding of a contract with the wastewater treatment Headworks upgrades. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Austin.
I'm going to turn it over to Josh, but just to give a background to this is that we've been working through this and it's kind of been a snowball since we started probably over a year ago. And so we officially bid it out in May. And Josh is going to go through what the results were.
Yeah,
So state your name and organization for the record.
Josh Elliott, George Miles and Buer. So we opened the bids for the Headworks project on May 26th. And there were two bid schedules for the project. The Schedule A, the base bid, was the scope. The primary scope, as you all may know it, replacing or rebuilding the two screens, replacing the grit system in kind, replacing or removing the lie pactor and putting a compactor in its place, and then various other smaller scope items that would make all of that possible. And then the add alternate was a secondary redundant fine 2mm bar screen to be placed in the bypass channel next to the primary screen. So the bid results, we had two bidders, Kuhn Construction and M2. The base bid for Kuhn Construction was $1,894,000 and the add alternate was $690,000. M2's base bid was $1,781,183 and their add alternate was $865,906. Both base bids came in over the requested loan amount of 1.75 million. And that 1.75 million, the hopes of that was to cover some pump station upgrades too, with whatever was left over. We have contacted DNREC to ask for a $500,000 addition. And they said that wouldn't be on their WEAC agenda until September. Equipment lead times have gotten worse since we were bidding. They were getting better and now they've swung the other way, primarily due to labor shortages in the equipment manufacturers, and that's for the grid system and the screen rebuilds. The rest of the equipment lead times are better. So lead times are currently at between 7 and 8 months. Alston, I talked to Freemeyer this morning and they said they're a little better than what they told us.
But if we move forward on one of these bids, does that mean that the compactor can be installed prior?
Definitely. Yeah,
Because that's going to be the biggest thing now. That's why they're using the screening dumpster as it stands. So if we were to have the compactor installed, that could potentially allow us to remove the screening dumpster and have all the piping back up to the EQ tank.
And along those lines, do we know what the cost is of the screening dumpster bypass system we have now on an ongoing basis?
No, we don't know what that is, but we own the screening dumpster.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
the
We purchased
labor, I believe, is the
Oh.
biggest.
Okay, yeah, that's,
Is the $500,000, is that in theory to cover just the cost of this project, or is that to cover also pump stations?
That would just cover this project.
Were these all just construction costs, no engineering costs or administrative costs?
So the numbers I read, yes, those are just construction costs. That's why we asked for
But
500.
but were your estimates, did they include that?
Our estimates, our original estimates, yes, they
It
did.
did include that,
Yeah.
okay.
Now, of course, when we originally went and got the loan, the project was different than what it is now. And we were hoping the pump station upgrades that were part of that loan could be put towards the headworks. The additional work, the HVAC work needed to bring it up to NFPA compliance and the control panel work. So we were hoping to shift that from the pump station work that we had in the original loan estimate, but pricing has just gotten out of hand.
So the HVAC work, you
Mhm.
said to bring it up to NFPA compliance, that's where I assume explosive atmosphere.
Yes,
Will it help with some of the problems we've been having with the life of the equipment in the headworks? Because it seems like there's been a lot of corrosion and panels, things.
so it is our hope that that will help, because right now those channels are covered. The flow channels are covered, but they're not sealed. You know, that's the only place that your corrosive gases are coming from, those flow channels. This HVAC scope of work covered sealing those channels, and then you'd have negative pressure in the channels and positive pressure in the headworks. So path of air would be forced into the channels and then out of the headworks building. So yes, you'd have less gases in the building itself.
So, I mean, I guess the elephant in the room is, we're not quite sure what the long-term implications are. So I'm going to ask what I think I already know the answer to question is there any of this that we don't need for the next 5 years that it would be maybe more frugal not to do now?
So I think there might be a few items that could be paired out. Maybe some of the control panels are in better conditions than others. Maybe a couple $100,000. I'd want to talk with Mike Woolgamuth first about his opinion on what can come out and what can't. And then, have a meet in the middle situation. I'm sure, Infomark's going to definitely want newer equipment. There's stuff that could be lived without probably.
But in that scenario, you'd have to rebid.
If we removed scope, yes.
Yeah.
But the big equipment, like the rebuild of this 2 and 5 mil screen, the lie pactor, all that, I mean, that needs to be done. And do you have a feel for approximately how much of the bid package is just for the scope that we have to do?
Yeah, so grit, that's failing.
Yeah,
It's better now, but it's like a monthly thing that's failing. The 2 millimeter screen is kind of the same. And of course, if the 2 millimeter screen goes down, everything gets sent to everything gets sent to the membranes. And then that causes more membrane fouling. But to answer your question, that there's not a lot. The project the whole time has kind of been, everything that's necessary. And then we ended up adding stuff off of the GHD report, primarily the HVAC upgrades. And if you're going to do the project, and now that it's known that there are NFPA deficiencies, we have to do those. Or it would be prudent liability wise to do those upgrades.
Like, is there some amount of work that we could delete that would not require rebidding? I mean, like 10% or something like that?
Russ, was that I think you directed that to me, and it's a nuanced question. I would advise against removing work without rebidding.
Does the $500,000 take into account the contingencies you have in there too?
Yeah. That would add some contingency in, yes.
Would this upgrade also serve us if we go with Sussex County? Is it something? No, so this is all just. Oh,
That's why I was asking a question,
Yeah.
you know, and it's what we've been debating for quite a while is, you know, what do we need for reliability purposes till we make a final decision? And, you know, but we don't want to risk the other side. And I assume, Press, you concur that, I mean, the bare minimum of, I mean, what's in the package.
We gotta get this done because it's,
Yeah.
you wouldn't believe how bad that Headworks are.
Yep.
Yeah, and
When
last year-
everything's working, it's working and it's doing its job, but when it's not, it's.
Right,
What's
because
the cost from you guys to do this for us and everything you've done with bidding and everything else?
So thus far, Earl, I would have to look it up. Charlie would know. Charlie's not here. As far as construction admin goes, it's actually a relatively quick project once all the equipment is in. I don't want to hamstring the whole process by just throwing a number out there. But it would be similar to any other project. It would be, we'd have an inspector out there and then any sort of construction issues and meetings I would handle.
I like,
And-
if I just like to know what that number is.
Yeah, and I have the number,
Yeah.
but not available.
Is your number a percentage of the gross or how does it?
So typically it's around 10%, maybe under. And we originally based that on the 1.25. So my guess is around the 100, 125.
And, you know, just to help bring Barbara up to speed, so.
Yeah.
All of this, the 5 mm screen, like none of it requires any major structural work to the building. Because that was one of the things that we were trying to do was fit within the existing channels and so on. So we didn't have to, spend the extra money on structural work, and B, have higher risk from unknowns once you start cutting into floor slabs and such. So is that?
Yeah, yes, everything. The only, there's no structural upgrades. It's all just really drilling some new holes for anchors and placing new anchors. There are no.
The only new equipment that's being added is it's gonna be the compactor because we're replacing the old lie pactor. So everything is pretty much rebuild the 2 mm, the 5 mm, the piston grit, the auger.
Yeah, the only thing that's different is moving from a lie pactor that hasn't worked in a good while to a compactor. And the compactor is a much larger unit and will do its job properly.
so thinking of the mitigation committee and the schedule they put together about elevating critical equipment and stuff, where would this fall in that?
I think it's too early.
You're the
It's
second.
5 years probably won't make much difference.
Well, and none of the equipment that we're installing is going to be susceptible to the 12.5 feet approximately flood elevation.
It's the second. and
It's on the
third floor
second and
building.
third floor of the building. So nothing we're putting in is going to be at risk. The rest of the plant will be, but we chose all the equipment that's well outside the flood elevation.
In the current state, like Josh had said, we took out the 1.75 about a year ago. Actually, it was April of 22. So where it stands right now is we reached out to the state, and we would have to wait until September to be put back onto an agenda to go before we act for any sort of adjustment to the original loan amount. So that's where it stands as of now.
So, I mean, Austin, what's the staff's recommendation at this point?
I mean, it's something that has to get done. I think the only way that you can think through it in a different perspective is if you rebid it as a line item and then see what your costs are per your line item and go about it that way. But it sounds as if you're kind of between a rock and a hard place because you have equipment that's 38 weeks. So if you go to rebid this, you're at a minimum of 6 to 8 weeks until.
And the price could go up again.
It could,
Yeah,
you know, and typically in a rebid, the price goes up, not down.
Yeah, and since none of the individual line items are things that we necessarily could live without for the next 5 years, I'm not sure I would understand what the value is.
Did anybody put in any sort of alternate to any of the equipment that was
Everything
there?
was spec.
That would be the only other thing is if you put a different piece of equipment that obviously could potentially be cheaper or more expensive,
Yeah.
just based off lead times.
Yeah, but and in that vein, the screens are being rebuilt, so
Yeah, they're Vivos.
You're set there. The Pistagrit, there are different systems that could go in there, but I don't see a huge cost savings by going with something else. Maybe a couple percent one way, but it could go the other way. And then the compactor, actually, we went through 3 or 4 different compactors, and then Infomark finally said, this is the one we want, and that's what we ended up going with.
So any of these changes, again, to Mike, I guess would trigger a rebid. I mean, if we take out a major piece of equipment to reduce the price, we're.
Yes, and I'm happy to get into some of that nuance in the executive session, but the short answer, press, is yes.
Infomark made the recommendations for some of these products. Is that what you're saying?
For the compactor, we were putting a pretty tight box for what we could actually get in there. And this compactor they brought to us, fit the bill.
And do we know approximately how much the compactor is?
I have the number, press,
Or Tom?
I will come up here and slap you.
I feel really bad for
We
me.
all need some coffee.
yeah, Tom, I have the number. It's another situation where it's not much different, no matter where you go.
That's what I'm trying to get to. I mean, if we're talking about $150,000 piece of equipment, even if you save 10% on it, you're saving $15,000.
Right.
In the grand scheme of things, being versus going out rebidding, open yourself back up to the market conditions
Yep.
and delaying the project.
Yeah, that's
Because-
where we are. Yeah.
Yeah, the risk here is, Barbara, if like the screens fail, as Joe said, the loading then goes down to the membranes. And we're putting our $1 million+ worth of membranes at risk and would incur costs to clean the membranes more frequently or as a result of. I think that's a valid statement.
Yeah, I think and Mike, you may be able to opine, but in this circumstance, if we go back to WEAC for any sort of funding, if you approve this, you can't approve and condition upon that funding. You're approving it and you reign the risk of not getting the additional funding, in which you would have to the extra $500,000 potentially.
Is WEAC the only logical source of additional funding?
No, remember, you have a line of credit that you can hit as well.
What's the interest rate on that?
But I don't know what it is today. And I don't know what it'll be in.
Okay, so we have a backup. If we
Yep.
say, look, this is important enough, we can't wait and hope that something will change for the better. Approve it. And we have other sources available that can fill the funding gap.
And remember, you have ARPA funds that are coming through that would work towards the water and sewer side. So the little bit that we factored in for potential pump stations, we can utilize the ARPA funds to help on that front too.
But we'd be continuing to rob Peter to pay Paul. I mean, versus the money that we were going to do to try to get our pump stations, up to today's standards. It's,
What do you think we should do?
Well, I definitely don't envy the position you're in with the uncertainty of the plan. My recommendation is to go with the base bid to M2, but not accept the alternate. The alternate is certainly not something you need, and if you wanted to do the alternate work in the future, there's nothing about this project that would change that. That would be,
Is it set up to accept that second line?
yeah, well, it was never set up to, but it can, yeah, that.
should we go in the bypass?
Yeah,
So we bid this directly. Did we talk to the county about using their buying power?
we did not, no.
Should we have?
I don't think we've gotten into a situation on any of our projects where we've done that. That I can think of. So I don't know what that option would look like.
They have more buying power than us is the reason I bring that
Yeah.
up.
So,
But they're going through a rebid as well, aren't they?
yeah, they just did a pump station job and they're rebidding it. Don't know all the details. I presume they removed some scope from the project, but I'm not certain.
But the other day, we have very little buying power. They have a lot of
Right.
buying power. Trying to hook up with them on some of these things might be wise for us. to
Yeah,
do.
so you could definitely save money going that way. Upfront, certainly. You do get.
What's the downside?
So the downside is if you buy a piece of equipment or the county buys a piece of equipment and. However that's worked out, then you get the piece of equipment to the job site and something. Doesn't fit or is damaged, then it is.
You would know that stuff though, right?
We know it, but then it is on us to go through the whole process of sending it back. So
Couldn't that happen anyway? If something got ordered incorrectly?
then it's on the contractor typically it's on the contractor to make anything like that. Right.
Yeah, if you're going out with it for lack of a better word, even though it's not a turnkey project where they're doing, procurement, installation, and they're giving you a firm price. But otherwise, if you buy equipment, you're really hiring them on, a fee or a P&M basis. All the risk of working on an old plant from a design unknown perspective falls on us.
But I would think, and again, I don't know much about this,
Mhm.
that we pay you $180,000.
Mhm.
You would have ownership in that, what gets done and how it gets done, and are the right things recommended.
Yeah, so we do, we have that ownership at a typical project where we do inspection. This is a little different in the sense that the guys building it will have the expertise. They've installed 100 of these compactors. Just like, and there are screws, bolts that don't necessarily get spec'd. And that we work with the contractors, go through everything. You spec typical hardware, go through it. There's other things, part of the piston grid system, there's a drive shaft that is 14 feet tall or so. So there's a couple different ways you can order this drive shaft. You can order it in one piece, you can order it in two pieces. If you order it in two pieces, you have to weld it in the plant.
Who makes those decisions today?
That decision is currently up to the contractor. So we spec the piece of equipment. If they need the two-piece drive shaft to get in there, that's on the contractor. They order the one piece or they order the two piece. Either one are acceptable to us as a final product. They do the same thing. They're functionally similar, but how you install it is different. So say we get to ordering everything, order the two-piece, now they've got or order the one-piece when they plan on doing the two-piece, and however they were gonna work that out. We get the one piece and they say, oh, no, we need a two-piece, that's gonna be $50,000 more dollars. Now, you're gonna ask, well, just work that out with them beforehand.
Which is what we already do, right? We have those, look, I'm not gonna beat a dead horse, but I got it.
Well,
Yeah,
I
it's,
think what you're saying is the coordination risk is entirely on the contractor to coordinate the shaft and that it fits with whatever it's going in or around or against. And that's totally their responsibility. You have to check it,
correct.
We
but
don't
it's
tell
their
them, we don't
responsibility.
tell them how to do the job. That's the bottom line. This is the job, here's the material.
Means and methods.
You build it, that's your responsibility.
Yeah. And to build it correctly, and it
Right,
works.
yeah.
And,
Without,
you know, the other. It's intangible, but I mean, so if we were to go that route of buying the material through the county or through, you know, eBay, whatever, and we picked up not only that risk, but we would also have a risk with, would the contractor give us the same pricing for the scope if you take all the material away, because they're making profit on that. And you then have the delay still because you have to go out for rebid on everything now.
And another issue with that is you might not be able to use the loan money to buy the equipment at that point. So the state requires everything to be bid competitively. When we bid it, we give the contractors the option to supply alternate equipment. And that satisfies the state not for not single sourcing equipment, even though 9 times out of 10 we get what we spec. We have to allow for alternates. I'm not certain what the state would say. They might say, no, you can buy what you want. Or they might say, no, you need to get 3 prices for equipment that will work and you need to take the low price. I'm not certain how that would work. But they don't allow for single sourcing equipment under state loans.
Could I ask you a question
Mhm.
about the contract requirements?
Yep.
Do they have a clear responsibility to maintain the plant operation throughout this contract?
In the sense that they can't disrupt operations.
Right.
Yes, so
You know, what, and whatever is needed, if the operator says, well, no, you can't do that today, or, you know, whatever it may turn out to be, there's got to be cooperation with the existing operator and the recognition that whatever that takes is part of the contract.
yeah, so there is a coordination section in the specs that goes over what they are required to do. And yeah, they can't just say, we're doing this today. I don't care what you guys are doing at the plant. They have a duty to work with the operator.
do you know this contractor? I'm not familiar with the name. Do you know that their
M2?
history? Yeah.
Yeah, we've worked with them on a lot of projects.
Okay.
I've personally worked with them on a project in Denton where they installed UV disinfection.
Okay, as long as you have
Yep.
experience. I didn't recognize the name, but
They're from Pennsylvania, and we've actually got a few active projects we're working on
Good.
now.
good.
Yep.
Yeah, the other question just popped out. They have insurance which is required to be presented that expires at the end of this year. Is there a requirement that they must present the renewal 60 days in advance or whatever as part of the contract requirements?
Yeah, I don't know how far in advance they're required to update it off the top of my head, but they're required to have the updated insurance throughout the entirety of the project.
But following on Richard's first point, do they have mitigation plans in case something, I know it never happens in construction, goes wrong during the process? I mean, to be able to ensure that the plant stays operational.
Yeah, so I guess you're asking if they went in and broke something, would they be responsible?
No.
No,
I'm not even, I'm even asking at a higher level.
yeah.
If something breaks, they take the 2 mm screen apart and it turns out, and I'm making this up, I know it's not, but you know, that it can't be repaired in a timely manner and it's out, that the plant still can continue to operate. I mean, I know that you, but I mean, just those type of events where something unforeseen or something gets dropped or whatever during the process, mitigation plan on how to keep our single plant.
Yeah, so upfront, no, they wouldn't have a plan for long-term bypass screening. It's something that could be done though. And they would be responsible for it.
Is it something worthwhile doing in advance, so we're not doing it on the price?
Not very often, but I've
Okay.
seen it. So it's not normal procedure. Because there's so many things that could happen.
Yeah, and there's,
Yeah, but I was doing it for a high level, you know, that
Yeah.
you put a hose here and a hose there and you put a
Yeah.
pump in, you know, those type of things. I mean, obviously you can't determine the specific event, but you know, the mitigation plan for, but if we're comfortable, and I leave that to you, Austin, that that's a low risk.
Such a loaded question.
That's your responsibility.
And just let the record know, and this is.
So now we know who
recorded.
blames. Thank
Yeah.
goodness.
I think it'd be good if they talked to the operator to make
Yeah.
sure each time they were doing something, they knew how they'd respond, but.
yeah, I don't think that's a bad idea at all, and I think M2 would be open to that. They do a lot of this work and they probably have a good idea of, if I said, hey, if the 2 mm screen, if you guys somehow mess this up, what are you gonna do to bypass it in the meantime?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, what they'll end up doing is probably draw down the headroom in the EQ tank and roll with the punches.
Yeah. And
So,
yeah.
so the fact that they're from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, will they be using local labor or will they be putting people up in a hotel for the duration of the project? How
So-
does that, are we paying for the fact that they live far away?
So based on my experience with them, their project manager will be from up in Pennsylvania, but their foremen live in the area. That they've got several foremen that live in the area, and I presume their labor is local. But even if they aren't, that's factored into the current price, and the other bidder, Kuhn Construction, they would have factored the same in to their bid.
We're not blessed with a lot of vendors in Lewes, Delaware.
So they can't say that they need an extension of time because they can't find, you know, a master electrician.
Correct. We'll have to work with them on the equipment side of things, given just the fact that equipment takes this long to get. I've called the manufacturers, or I spoke to M2. They said, you know, we were the apparent low bidder, and they said, you know, we do want to let you know, these two manufacturers have long lead times that are problematic to the contract time. So I called those manufacturers and they said, yes, contract or lead times have gotten worse since we've been working on the project.
Will they be required to make up and present and keep up to date any kind of a simplified progress schedule?
Yep, we have them update every month at progress meetings.
It should be pretty detailed too. It's
Yeah, yeah,
Not not
it's a,
simplified,
it's
yeah.
a detailed
Yeah.
Gantt style bar chart.
I don't think we have a choice. I
I
mean,
don't know if that's the problem.
Well, yeah, but we want to have the presentation.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The communication of, hey, here's where there's a problem and here's why, and here's how we're working to address it.
And I guess I didn't quite get to it, but I definitely do not recommend going with the alternate schedule. That's the secondary screen. It's, did I get to that?
You mentioned about it, but
Yeah.
it's at this point in time, with the discussion that's being had about the wastewater treatment plant, it really doesn't make too much of sense to invest another $500,000+ into a bypass screen when
Yeah, so we were originally intended to use to build redundancy into the plant and put a second screen in parallel in the bypass channel. But, and you did say this earlier, nothing we do here would impede that being done down the line if we decided to. So I think Josh and Austin's point are that, since we are money tight, we also don't know what the future of the plant is. It's not a real risk.
You'll have a newly rebuilt screen that should function bare minimum for this 5 years.
Better.
Be careful.
What is the expected lifetime of the equipment?
So new equipment is typically 20 years in a Headworks. Rebuilt equipment is not going to be 20 years. It's going to be 10 to 15 years. It's also not as expensive as new equipment. Yeah.
And none of this can be used if we go with the county. It's all just, yeah,
Well, I mean,
Unless the county can work it in. Yeah.
yeah.
yeah, I mean,
The
a
use-
couple of things. I mean, first of all, you're using old equipment that's already been rebuilt.
Yeah,
Secondly, we do need to keep our plant running
right.
till the new plant is up.
Which may not be just 5 years.
Well,
Yeah.
but they overlap with each
Yeah.
other. I mean, so you can't take the equipment out of the plant to move it if it was even worthwhile during that construction phase.
That being said, it's worth discussing with Infomark what sort of salvage value it may have.
Yeah.
They very well could use it, use the equipment as backup somewhere.
that's the lead times.
Yep.
Yeah, but I think that's a generic statement for whatever we do with the wastewater treatment
They're
plant.
salvage.
I mean,
Yeah.
we would salvage the plant out and, spare parts.
Yep.
Any other questions?
So it'd be a motion in either direction. And Mike, you can massage it if you need to, but I think it would be a motion to, if you're going to approve, a motion to approve awarding the bid to M2 Construction. With staff looking into additional funding through WEAC potentially.
So just so that it's clear for the record, because we told, so the M2 bid is
$1,781,183.
and the schedule for that is,
That's just the schedule.
yeah, I've got it electronically. right here.
Yeah.
And the lead time is,
Lead times from the constraining manufacturers. 30 to 34 weeks.
and is there parts that part of the project that they could get started on so that we at least could recover some of the schedule?
Yes, there is definitely work that could be started on. I didn't get those updated lead times, Tom.
Mhm.
But there are other scope items that could be touched before that long lead time equipment comes in.
Yeah, because it really, the HVAC can be decoupled from any of the flow work.
Right.
Now, I don't know what the lead time on the HVAC equipment is,
Yeah.
but if there's things like that we could do to, so that as the equipment comes in, it goes in without incurring demob, remob charges.
Yeah, I feel comfortable with the bid in that it's close to the estimate really, even though it's higher and it's close to the other bidder. I mean, this, it's like 7% off the other
Agreed.
bidder. So I think it's a reasonable bid evidently. So I'm comfortable with that, even though it's higher.
Yep.
So I think, and if you like the contractor,
I think the bid numbers are just a reflection of the times.
Yeah.
It's not a great time to be doing necessary infrastructure work.
What's the schedule once the equipment starts being installed? How long will the project, excuse me, take?
So the current contract length is 270 days. That included, I'd have to look at my notes. I believe though it was about 4 months of lead time. And now these long items are 8 months and 270 days would be a 9-month contract. So what would basically happen is they're going to order the equipment pretty quickly. They'll get submittals for the equipment, and lead times actually have 2 breakdowns. There are the lead times for submittals. They're shorter, 5 to 10 weeks. Lead times for equipment after the submittals are approved. So after everything comes in and we get a firm date for when the equipment would be delivered, that is when we would be talking about a time extension. But we would only allow the time extension for those portions of the project that are impacted by the equipment delays, if that makes sense. So right now, the contract is 270 days. If we got started on day 1 with the long lead time items, that's 240 days of the contract before you get them. So it's slightly unreasonable for them to have expected to be able to get them in that 30 days. So there'd be probably a time extension for those items only in the project.
Is there a time of the essence clause in the contract?
Typically, yes. Yeah, everything is. They're required to get the project done in the time allotted.
Right, but they may be looking to push off the time that they start and don't want to start and stop. But progress can be made on okay, there's a chunk of time, a month's worth of work. And then a lack of work for whatever reason, but let's get that month's worth of work in now
Right.
as soon as possible.
Yeah, yes. Right now, it's a 270-day contract. We have the option to say, you bid the project, get it done in 270 days. We're not giving you an extension. But that's going to be a little bit of working with them. We're going to say, get this other stuff done on time. We recognize that it's going to take you a while to get the equipment. That's how we're going to have to work that.
But the contract says that you can, and they must cooperate with that negotiation, let's call it.
The contract says they're required to work within the 270 days.
Okay,
And then anything other than that is part of the negotiation. They could, like any other publicly bid work, that's where we are with Dunham and Smith right now, where they have 630 days to do the whole project. And they've elected to start late because they said, well, we can do it in 530 days. The anticipation was that they would get this project done in 270 days. So that's what we're going to push them to do.
These guys are, you've worked with them before, like you said,
Yes,
and they're reasonable to work with and
Yes.
professional and,
yeah, yes.
yeah.
So
Okay.
one of the better, I've not done a ton of treatment plant jobs, but one of the better contractors I've worked with on treatment plants and pump stations. Yep. Yes,
So I think Kim said the current GMB fees are 125,000.
yep. So they were right on that 10%.
You still have CA, construction admin, which
What were you talking about? You were talking about
So-
what was billed or what you're expecting to bill?
Expected for CA.
Yeah, see, that's what I thought. He gave you the figure for what's going to cost going forward. You're saying, but
to
what
date
they've
is
already,
130
so,
Yep.
roughly.
Yeah, that 10% was CA. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, we have a motion as outlined.
Can we just clarify the motion, by the way? So it's a motion to accept the bid from M2.
With the caveat that staff would,
That's what I'm worried about though, Austin. That's what I want to be crystal clear about because you're not conditioning the bid.
Yeah.
So based on this discussion, staff is to follow up, but the actual motion is to accept the bid.
And that'd be the base bid.
Without the option, yeah, the base bid without the,
I'll second that.
on the question.
The only thing and again, this is something that has to happen. I don't disagree with that at all. But if we have someone who has more buying power than we do, I don't understand why we didn't go to them potentially with your guys' engineering expertise, with Infomark's expertise, and try to get us a better bid. I don't really understand why we didn't do that.
You know whether the county's ever done that?
well, the county uses the TNM, but I mean,
Maybe with other municipalities.
I think they have contracts that allow other municipalities to piggyback off of them.
Yes, I'm very aware of that piece.
Yeah.
So it's just that if they've got that buying power and they let other people use it, it seems to me like that's something we should start efforting going forward, if at least as an option to look at.
I don't think it's a bad option to look at, Earl. I do agree. It's always an option to look at. You definitely need to see what you're saving by taking that route. And in this case, if it was even an option.
And that's why we like you.
Yeah,
Right, because you
yes.
can figure that stuff out.
Yes.
And I mean, I agree with you completely going forward. But I mean, this project has been in the works
A
for,
little over a year.
yeah, because, well,
And
actually,
the talk's longer than that.
Yeah.
Actually
Yeah.
working, yeah, a little over a year. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this came up in 2019 after the spill. So, but you're right, things have changed now, and going forward, we should look at pooled buying sources.
Yeah, and I guess I'm not saying we would have gone that route. I guess I didn't quite know that was an option. But going forward, it's worth looking at. Yeah.
Yeah, and.
I'm not slowing this down at all. I'm just.
Yeah, and to your point is that I don't think any of us knew a year ago when we started down on
Yeah.
the details that it would be an option. So it's part of the benefits that all these discussions with the county have led to. Okay, so we had by Barbara and seconded by Press. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
Thank you. Thanks, Josh.
so I just for the record, it was 5-4-0 against. All right. We have a motion to go into,
Nope.
Oh, we got another one.
oh. Sorry. Open forum general discussion on the GMB presentation for water main assessment.
So we're just picking a date here. So we're looking at the week of the 19th, excluding the 19th itself, because that's Juneteenth. So I have 4 dates that I'm going to throw out there, and I want to see if any of them work for all of everybody's schedules. First one's the 20th. Actually, it's each day, but I have the 20th from 10 to 1 as being open. The 21st from 9 to 2 being open. The 22nd from 9 to 1 and the 23rd all day.
Good.
Anyone better than the other?
Is this something that you would need me there in person?
No. Unless you want to come down, Mike, unless
I
you,
always like to make sure, I can participate any of those times virtually. If you need me in person, Tuesday or Wednesday is better.
no.
I think that's an IA bot that's talking to us right now.
Did you say virtually you're good with any of them, Mike?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. Wednesday, the time,
Wednesday 9 to 1.
okay, so it's before. All right, I'm okay with any of them.
Richard?
I don't know. I have to look at my calendar. I don't have it on my phone.
So let's shoot for, let's do 9 AM on the 22nd. And if Richard comes back and says he's unavailable on another dates, I'll coordinate with you guys. I just wanted to put everybody in one room so we can figure that out.
Can that be Zoom?
Yeah, if you're not here, we can zoom it. Can you let Vincent and Ben know?
Yeah, that's all we did.
Last one.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Have a good day. All right, now. Where I left off. We have a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
What time did we say?
thank you much. And Mike, we'll pick you back
9
up when we get upstairs.
Yep, sounds good.